Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Rouge Rugby podcast, where we talk about real Canadian rugby. I'm Hugh Hardy, joined by Edward Pye. Ed, we have had quite a sensational send-off to this edition of the Women's Rugby World Cup. The first time we've had a double header to mark the finals, the bronze final immediately followed by the World Cup final, opening with New Zealand versus France for third place. France winning that game comparatively well, but all our attention was on the final between England and Canada. And yeah, it started out fairly well, Canada getting the first points on the board before England remembered that they're world number ones and they were playing in their stadium in their World Cup. And then, well, there's a reason they've been world number one for so long. Let's just put it like that. Immediate response. And then they were just able to get their foothold in the game and able to just turn the screw essentially, leading 21-8 at half time. And obviously, we have this thing in rugby where it's like whoever scores early in the second half, that can either be a momentum builder or a momentum killer. And sure enough, England were the ones to continue their momentum. Now, admittedly, Canada did get back into it when a tip tackle reduced England down to 14 players. Age Hogan Rochester getting her second try of the game. And But ultimately, the comeback was too little, too late, and by the time England got back to their full squad, they were able to get another try in to seal out the final result of England 33, Canada 13. Uh, yeah, it was a bit of a bittersweet feeling after this match, absolutely. We talked about after the New Zealand game, like the emotion coming from the players knowing what it meant. And you could see that on both teams in this game. You could see England, I think, more relief than celebration of anything. They were in this position 3 years ago in New Zealand where they had been in control for the majority of the game despite being a player down. And it just came to the last play, line out intercepted, ball kicked into touch. Still world number ones, but not world champions. And now, after 3 years of honing their skills, honing their resources, they were able to finally do it and do it at home as well. So, congratulations to England in that regard. For Canada, the emotions of the week had obviously built up, and it's just the confirmation on Holly Davidson's whistle to mean that this is it, only the silver. And yeah, I in that moment you can feel pretty dejected, and it's obviously going to hurt for a while. But sometimes that's sport. It's cruel and beautiful at the same time. But that's just me talking about the game. Ed, do you pick up anything interesting that you found from this?
Yeah, I mean, the loss I don't think detracts from Canada's overall performance in the tournament.
Hmm.
I think their overall game plan that they came into the tournament with was an innovation that the women's game hasn't seen. So I think in terms of, what they came in with, the position that they're able to come away with, that win over New Zealand, just their overall attacking play and the way that they went about their World Cup. I think they can be very proud of that. So, disappointment, of course, not getting through to the win, but lots of really great takeaways for Canada from this World Cup. They talk about, having to lose a final before you can win a final. England did that in the previous World Cup. They lost that one to New Zealand after thinking that they were coming in number one. Um, and then they've come back and won this one. maybe this loss is what Canada needs to actually go forward and pick up the next World Cup or win in the next World Cup. So I think they'll take a lot away from it. One of the things I think that Canada maybe lacked from was not having played England that much. I think they were very prepared for the New Zealand game, having played New Zealand a couple of times in New Zealand and having seen exactly what New Zealand bring with their game strategy, and they were able to actually work their way around that. Having not played England that much in their past 4 years, maybe they didn't have that exposure to the strength of the English scrum, the strength of the line out, their tackling percentages, or the defensive game plan. And it comes back to that old adage: you can have an incredible game plan, you can have an incredible attacking strategy, but if you don't have your set piece correct and you haven't got that fixed and strong, it's going to make it very difficult to win the game. When we're looking at some of the stats from that game, England tackled at 89%, so almost 90% there, where Canada was only at 80%. The scrum was 100%, where Canada's scrum was only at 60%. The English lineout was at 91%, where the Canadian lineout was only at 79%. So when you've got these key moments, there was a point in the match where Canada had an attacking raid just after the second Asia Hogan Rochester try, where Canada was in a position to take it to a one-score game. So if they had scored there, it would have been a one-score game, a 6-point game.
Mm.
That's when you think maybe Canada's got a chance here. Um, but I think they had a scrum sort of center field, and England just bullied them off the ball there, and I think won a scrum penalty there. So those critical moments when your set piece is failing, that's something that obviously Canada will take forward, for future. All of the forwards did very well. Dilly Mannon was great throughout the whole tournament. But when it comes to scrummaging, if you can't win those scrums, you can't win those
Mm.
lineouts, it's going to make it very tough to win the game. If we actually look at the overall stats, Canada actually won the territory and the possession, but when
Mm.
they got into crucial moments of the game where they had opportunities to score and tighten the game up, they weren't able to because the set piece failed there. So, that's a takeaway for them. I think having played this game, they'll be better, and hopefully, the idea is that they take all of this success, all of the learnings, the game strategy, everything that they've gotten through this World Cup, and just take that forward.
Mm.
I think having this new tournament coming up is going to be great for Canada. I think that's only going to strengthen them in terms of getting them exposure to all of the top teams on a regular basis. I see bright things ahead for Canada, even though they've lost this one.
Mm.
The way that they played and the tactics that they took into the World Cup were fantastic.
Yeah, I know we talked last week of that. Oh, if Canada can play this style of total rugby like they played against New Zealand, they will win the World Cup. And the thing is that what I commend England on doing is being able to shut down then momentum before it can progress. So you'll notice if you go back, England dedicate very few tacklers to rucks so that they have other players around the ruck so that they can shoot up as soon as possible once Peltier or Apps or whoever's in the scrum half position and just be able to pick them off and run up and choke out the play style that Canada is trying to do. It's essentially England bullied Canada into playing England style of rugby rather than Canada being able to secure their footing. But again, you'll notice with both of Asia Hogan Rochester's tries, she was incredible in that those tries came about from that free-flowing total rugby that Kevin Rouet has fashioned for this Canada side. And again, it's one of the things like you don't ever want to lose, and especially in professional sport, the importance of winning far is far, far too important at times to be going on. But if you aren't going to lose to anyone, losing to the world number ones, I think is a very respectable way to go down. And, considering the last time these two teams played in a World Cup final, Canada was only able to get 9 points on the board. So they've improved in that regard. Um, and, we had some big stars in attendance. Mark Carney was there wearing his Canada jersey underneath his jacket, wearing a Rugby Canada cap as well. And, even in the crowd, which was filled with predominantly England supporters, there were loads of people wearing red and supporting Canada. And that was pretty amazing to see. The information that has come from the Rugby World Cup following this final says the total attendance was 81,885. That is the most attended women's Rugby World Cup final and the second most attended Rugby World Cup final between men and women. So
Yeah, and
that's
I'll
incredible.
I'll add in there, Stu. Before this World Cup, the Canadian women's highest attendance uh, in any game was only 11,000 people at a game. So to
Yeah.
go from that now to have the high attendance being almost 82,000 is absolutely incredible.
Mm. And I just want to give a lot of credit now to both World Rugby and England Rugby because, we've seen from the past few women's Rugby World Cups, we've had, um, it's very easy to push women's sport to, the smaller stadia, the alternative options available. And now, in the home of rugby, we have seen that not only does women's rugby have a place on the biggest stadium in rugby and the most historic stadium in rugby, but also that women's sport is profitable, is engaging, is worth developing, worth supporting, and the format in which this competition has been run by having all the pool games on Saturdays and Sundays, I think is an excellent template for the Men's Rugby World Cup, which has admittedly eight more teams, but you know, Friday's a new Saturday. Why not get more games going then? And I think it sets an incredible template that is very easy to be replicated, not just for Australia 2029, but Australia 2027 as well. Um, and where my hope is that everything continues to improve, attendances continue to increase. And, now that we have the time, the 4 years to prepare and see where all these teams are going, and with this new WXV Global Series, hopefully we can get confirmations of teams sooner, so we can get confirmations of pools sooner, so we can get tickets sorted sooner as well. And yeah, I think the RFU's structure of this competition in collaboration with World Rugby has been phenomenal. It has allowed smaller teams to be part of double headers at certain stadia across England and ensured that more people get exposed to these games. And interestingly, the captain of the Black Ferns was saying in a press conference after the game is that, oh, this is going to be the most attended final in Women's World Cup history, but you're the bronze final, so probably no one's going to turn up to your game. And they were late getting to the stadium because there were so many people lining the streets waiting to watch the Black Ferns play France that their coach was stuck and they were late to warm up and get ready for the game. And I think that's amazing. I think the people that have continued to praise women's sport in general, including women's rugby, feel very justified now in their stance. And
I
I
think, Stu.
agree. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I think when you go into some of the comment boards
Mm,
around women's sports, there's this conversation that keeps popping up when we're talking about whether women should be paid the same as professional men's players.
mm,
And this argument always pops up that uh, well, if the woman had a good product that people wanted to watch, then they should get paid the same as men. Well,
mm,
it's purely around the resources that have been put into it to actually get the game to a level where people have it's got exposure and people can actually see how good athletes these women are and the quality and the fluidity of the women's game, rugby in particular. But we've seen it with basketball as well, a huge growth there as well. Um, so that argument kind of doesn't make any sense anymore. We've just seen a
mm.
final with 82,000 people watching, cheering, going crazy over this Women's World Cup. The audience is there, and unions should be putting more resources into female sports across the board.
Mm. Yeah, that's a follow-on from rugby sevens at the Olympics, in that women's rugby sevens is now the highlight of that tournament, of those two tournaments, I should say. And now it's now in great interest of seeing where the RFU in particular want to take women's rugby come the 2026 Six Nations and the 2026 WXV Global Series. Because if it is a case of, you know, teams from the Pacific Four Series are going to be coming to England to play 3 games against England, are those games now going to be held at Twickenham? Because as we've seen, there's definitely an appetite for England Canada to be held at Twickenham again at the earliest possible time. We've already had number of England France clashes being held at Twickenham during the Women's Six Nations. So yeah, I think it's time for the RFU to pencil in those dates around September and October, whichever they're going to be, of saying that, yeah, I think we can make a big deal about this going on.
The other thing to mention there, Stu, is that we saw with the men's game when it went professional in '96, there was several countries that were ahead of the game in terms of their pathways and everything, and the
Mm,
resources that they put into that to keep them at the
mm,
top of the world. Uh, it's taken a little bit. We saw some countries like Ireland improve gradually and have gotten to that same level now. But we see now countries like Scotland and a host of other countries getting up to that same level and to those top tier, Argentina as well. So I think what we'll see is if these resources are going to go into the women's game, we'll see a very quick evening out of not just the top four where there's the best four and then the rest are a little bit below, but I think what we'll see is an evening out. So hopefully we can get to 10, 12 teams that could potentially win a World Cup in the future.
yeah, that's what I'm looking forward to. I know that one thing that especially comes around in the men's Rugby World Cup is the fabled pool of death, when you have a pool with at least three of like the top 10 teams somehow in it, and you're like, oh, who's going to get through and who's going to get out? And I want to be in a position where every pool is the pool of death. Every
Mm.
pool is a
Yeah.
challenge. It's good, and it just makes the game better as a whole. And yeah, I'm hoping that this can be the launch pad for these kinds of competitions come the future. No, there needs to be a focus on a certain player, because you can be argued to say if she's the best in Canada, but there's no question that she is the best in the world in 2025. And that is the enigmatic de Goede, Sophie de Goede, who, didn't get to raise the Women's Rugby World Cup trophy, but is named by World Rugby as the Women's Player of the Year for 2025. And we saw the Canadian players lifting her up on the shoulders and chanting, Sophie, Sophie, Sophie. And, you got to take these wins when you can, especially after such a emotional loss as well. But as Rudyard Kipling once wrote, if you can meet with triumph and disaster and treat those two imposters all the same. And now, what has happened in the past few days is, yeah, there's been sadness, dejection that Canada um, didn't win the World Cup. But what has happened that hopefully will endure is that more and more Canadians are recognizing this team. In fact, more and more fans of women's rugby across the world are recognizing this team, are recognizing the skills that this team has, the gameplay that has been developed by Kevin Rouet, who, if you'll notice in his interview post-final, mentioned he'll be back again in 4 years' time, which is interesting, seeing as his contract was only extended 2 years, but we will see. And yeah, I think that the most important thing that comes out of this is that if there is even one young athlete who wants to get involved in rugby, ends up going to their local rugby club or finding out if their school has a girls' rugby team, or any rugby player that wants to be like, okay, I've seen that. I've seen that gold trophy. I want to be a player that lifts that trophy. What do I need to do? We talked a couple of weeks ago about this new pathway development plan that has been implemented or is in the process of being implemented by both Rugby Canada and the provincial unions as well. Hopefully that comes into effect sooner rather than later. And going forth, there will be, young girls who are like, I want to slam into my friends as fast as I can and take them to ground and grab a weird shaped ball and place it underneath the post or kick it between the posts. And they'll be able to know the pathway that they can take to get to that World Cup final. And I just want to say, I love this team. I love all the players on the team. I love the entire coaching staff. I love how impassioned they are. I even love their TikTok accounts. I've actually started following Courtney O'Donnell's TikToks, which I find really funny. And yeah, I think that this team will hold a special place in Canadian sports history. I'm also aware that there are a number of players on this squad who, may not be playing next year, or at the very least won't be playing at the next Women's Rugby World Cup. And I'm not going to name names because obviously I can't read the future, but I want to say to them, if you've made a decision that it is time to hang up the boots, I want to thank you for everything you've done for Canada Rugby, for the B Leaf mentality, and we wish you all the best from a very, very grateful nation. And you know what? It's not even just me who is in love with this team, because apparently there are enough people in love with this team that Crave wants to make a mini series about Canada women's journey to the final of the Rugby World Cup. There's only been a little bit of information that's come out, but Crave is to produce a 4-episode docuseries, and it'll be made by Boat Rocket Studios. It is going to be produced by Jay Baruchel and the Tragically Hip. It's going to be primary sponsor partner is Canadian Tire. BMO are also sponsors as well. And the docuseries is to be directed by Kathleen Jame or Jamie. I'm not 100% sure on pronunciation. Apologies for that. But I will say anything that gets more eyes on rugby, more people talking about rugby, this is exactly what we want to see. And, I think a lot of people have Crave subscription. Obviously, TSN and Crave both owned by Bell Media. TSN obviously being the rights holder to the Women's Rugby World Cup. So, this makes a lot of sense. Uh, Ed, what did you think when you heard this news come out?
It's fantastic. I mean, anything that increases exposure to women's rugby is going to be good for the game. Interesting, Jay Baruchel's attached to it because he's more of a comedy actor in my experience, but he's Canadian, so I'm sure he's very proud of the team, along with the tragically hip there. It'll be interesting. Are they doing? Is it a dramatization, a reenactment, or is it going to be more of a documentary style following? Because I'm not sure if they had cameras following them the whole time there.
I think from the way the press release announced it, it's a docu-series, so it's probably going to be more documentary based, but I think it's also going to be a lot of interviews, a lot of footage from the World Rugby and especially the Canada Games. And I think as well there'll be a lot of behind the scenes stuff. So, for example, Canadian women, I want to say it's like had a dog's day out because there was a video of them on the World Rugby channels of them taking a day off to play with a lot of dogs. I don't know if that was dog therapy or anything along those lines, but it seems to be like a great time had by all. And maybe we'll get to, if it's anything at all, like Drive to Survive on Netflix, where we pull back the curtain and we find out a bit more about the players as individuals, about what they have had to sacrifice to get to this point. I think that'll do wonders in terms of audience generation. And, it may even propel to, have a camera in the dressing room when it comes to the Pacific Four series in 2026. Who knows? We'll have to find out. But yeah, I think that's a good enough reason as ever to get a Crave subscription when that series comes out.
There's been a few good rugby shows in the last little while. Full Contact on Netflix there, and
Mm,
Taika Waititi, a New Zealand director, made his name doing an All Blacks documentary. So I'm sure there's going to be some good resources put into it. I also, when you were talking about TikTok there, I've never watched hairstyling videos before, but I watched a few of the Canadian women. They had focus on what type of hairstyles. The double braid in the World Cup was very very popular. So you can see the type of reach that they're getting with some of the content that they're putting out. So that's something I think that has really increased the exposure of the women's
mm,
game. Getting content out onto platforms like TikTok.
mm.
And I think it's very effective. So more power to them there.
Yeah, I also saw a TikTok of Asia Hogan Rochester, because she often gets asked the question, why do you have glitter on your face when you play rugby? And she said, well, first response is, why not? And I was like, well, that's all the explanation I need. You don't need to go any further. It's your decision, your body, your choice. I'm not one to judge. And yeah, I also saw a video of Rogan, Hogan Rochester's dad at Twickenham saying how much he loved the team, how much he loves rugby, how much he loves women's rugby, and obviously how much he loves his child. I think that was pretty nice to see. I think that was wonderful. And yeah, I think we have about 2 or 3 weeks now until the Premiership Women's Rugby season kicks off. And I'm sure there'll be a lot of the English teammates on those teams flashing their lovely gold medals. But so just keep this in mind for all the Canadian rugby players. It's perfectly acceptable to tackle someone with a World Cup medal so long as they have a ball in their hands. And as long as you don't get carded, Should all be fine. But again, a massive congratulations to this team making it to the Women's Rugby World Cup final, the most attended final in Women's World Cup history, one of the most broadcast events in rugby union history for the UK, at least. They had a audience figure over 5 million watching this final. Um, I don't yet know the numbers for Canada, but I'm hoping they're pretty high as well. Obviously, rugby clubs, if they've got so many, I don't know if they count as one or as however many the watch party had. I don't work in that kind of area, so that's all up in the air. But again, thank you, congratulations, enjoy some time off because the cycle has reset. All eyes are now on Australia. We go again. So, if you want to watch any rugby this coming weekend, unfortunately, there's no women's rugby going on, but the Premiership, sorry, the Prem and URC has now returned, and that is available to watch on Sportsnet Plus. And if you enjoyed this episode, be sure to check out more as well as our written pieces on our website, therougerugby.ca. We're also available on Spotify and on YouTube at The Rouge Rugby. Make sure to like and subscribe and stay up to date with all our episodes. We're also available across social media, including Facebook, Blue Sky, Instagram, TikTok, Threads, and X, all at The Rouge Rugby. Ed, where can people find you on social media?
Facebook and Instagram rugby 101 underscore 2025.
And you can find me across social media at Hardman, spelled H4RDMAN. Well, that's where we're going to end this episode. Ed, thank you for joining me, and thank you all for joining us for another episode of the Rouge Rugby Podcast, where we talk about real Canadian rugby. We hope you can join us again next time.